Got up early this morning. I got probably 5 o'clock shadow going. I went to that Good Friday prayer breakfast with John Ashcroft this morning. It started at 6:30, so I had to be out of that. Actually, earlier than that.
It's early. My kids are dragging me out of bed at that time. Barely. I'm barely coherent at 6:30. Let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. We have 6 viewer questions.
None from you guys?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that's just in addition to, you know, tell us about yourself, plans for the, you know, border, immigration, budget, healthcare, education, Afghanistan, all that good stuff. And then the viewer questions, 3 of them are about the budget, 2 of them are about just politics in general, and then there's one about education.
Where's that? We're still getting some camera issues worked out.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want Jen's one-shot thing first? Okay. We'll do it in chair
Okay.
first.
Sorry, sit up.
Camera 1, camera 2.
I don't have my IFB in today, so just let me know when you're ready.
Maybe ready.
Well, we're here today with Frank Antenori, one of the candidates in the Republican race for Congressional District 8. Frank, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. Well, let's just jump right into it. We want to learn a little bit more about you, a little bit more about your stance on the issues, and gonna field some questions from our viewers as well. Let's start with you telling everyone a little bit about yourself and why you're running for Congress.
Well, I grew up in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania, joined the military right after I graduated from high school. I spent 20 years in the Army, most of those in the Special Forces. I served 2.5 years in combat, most of that in the Middle East, Iraq, Afghanistan, Desert Storm. While in the military, I met my wife, Leslie, who was also a paratrooper. We have 2 sons, Frank and Brody. We've been married now for 20 years, just had our anniversary just 2 weeks ago. When I retired from the military after 20 years, I came here to Tucson for a job opportunity. I work with a major aerospace defense contractor here in town. I'm a program manager. I develop hybrid unmanned ground vehicles, robots, for the military. I've been there about 8 years. I ran for the legislature in 2008, got elected to the State House, and then subsequently was elected to the State Senate in 2010. And I've been serving the people of Southern Arizona for 4 years, working hard to keep our state's financial situation stable and balancing budgets and cutting spending and reducing the size of government and keeping government in check.
So why make a run for the U.S. House?
Well, because when I was elected to the Arizona legislature, we had a governor and a legislature at the time that had spent money that the people of this state just didn't have. We had a $3 billion budget deficit, and the mindset was we had to raise taxes, raise taxes, raise taxes to deal with this deficit. And the people of Arizona said no. Our government has gotten too big. It had doubled in size practically over the last 10 years, and they said we wanted to keep it in check. So they sent guys like me, fiscal conservatives up there, that reduced the size of government, reduced spending, and balanced the budget without having to jack taxes up. And now we're facing the same critical financial situation in the United States, where we had a Congress, both Republican and Democrat, and presidents that have run the budget through the roof, have borrowed money. We're borrowing $50,000 a second in this country to pay our bills, and it's to the point where we can't afford it anymore. And I want to go to Washington and deliver the same fiscal conservative message to D.C. that we delivered here in Arizona, that you can cut spending, you can reduce the size of government, and you can balance the budget.
All right. A couple of things that set you apart from the other candidates.
Well, the biggest is experience. You know, everybody's got a resume, all right? If you were going in for a job what you would look at and you see, okay, these guys all have this nice resume, but oh, this guy's got 4 years of job experience. You know, none of these others have experience. Oh, they claim they have a little experience here, a little experience there, but it's a whole different story in the legislative process and dealing with politics and the dynamics of the political environment. And you got to have somebody who's been on the ground a while, understands all the parliamentary parlor tricks that are played, the games that lobbyists play, the arm twisting that occurs in the political environment, and can deal with that and represent the people of Southern Arizona from day one. Unlike previous elections where you have a 2-month period to get your feet on the ground, get your staff together, whoever wins this election is sworn in right afterwards. They don't have time to learn. There's no learning curve. It's hit the ground running, ready to go, and I'm the only guy in this race that's got that experience. I've been doing it for 4 years. I've been very successful in the legislature. I'm one of the most effective in the legislature. I'm the Senate Majority Whip right now, and I got in that position in less than 3 years in the legislature, so I know how to operate in that environment and be successful, and I look forward to doing that for the people of Southern Arizona.
When you think about Southern Arizona and the issues that are most critical for us here, if you had to choose two, what would you say would be the most important?
Well, number one, of course, is the economy. People want to work, and we've had an environment in this country that is purely anti-business. We've also had that issue here in Southern Arizona. We've got to get out of that mindset. We got to understand that entrepreneurs create jobs. Government does not create jobs. The private sector creates jobs. Government gets in the way of creating jobs. And by getting government out of the way, you can create jobs. We have to understand that simple concept. That's the number one issue. And we have to reduce government, reduce regulation, reduce taxes, and make it profitable and worthwhile to invest and grow a business in this country again, and in particular in Southern Arizona. The second thing, of course, because of our proximity with the border and the fact that having been in the legislature and the issues that we've been dealing with the last 4 years, illegal immigration and border security are the next biggest issue. So economics and border security.
All right. If you get elected to this spot, to the District 8 spot, what would be your priority? You don't have a whole lot of time to work with, but what would you hope to do?
Whoever gets there is going to get there right in the middle of the federal budget cycle. They have to have the budget done by October 1st. You have to have somebody who understands how budgets are built, how budgets are negotiated, and how budgets are passed. And again, the only guy in this race that's done that and has that experience is me. Last year, I was on the Senate budget team. I was one of 4 senators that helped craft the Arizona budget last year. I fundamentally, I would tell you, did not quite understand the process until I actually got involved and actually had to build a budget. It is not as easy as people think. There's a lot of things that can be snuck in, a lot of things that people don't know what to look for will get by them. And you got to have somebody that knows how to do that. When you get up there, whoever is up there in June, July, August, September, October, as they're working on that budget or the continuing resolution, since the U.S. Senate will likely not support a Republican budget out of the House, they have to make sure that it is a budget that sustains those key areas of national security and the main functions of government and doesn't continue to spend money we don't have. And you got to have somebody who knows how to do that.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about border security. You
Sure.
mentioned that as being your second biggest priority for us. Do you have a plan that you think will secure our border?
You know, I have endorsed the ROB plan, the Restore Our Border plan, named after Rob Krentz, the rancher that was murdered out in Cochise County. I've met with dozens of ranchers. I've been involved with border security for the last 4 years. Unlike some of my opponents who went down to the border for the first time ever during this campaign, I've been out there quite frequently, including shortly after Rob Krentz's murder, meeting with ranchers and hearing their concerns and understanding the key issues. And they have crafted a plan, an 18-point plan, that is pretty in-depth and pretty articulate on what really needs to be done to bring that security to our border. And whether it's bringing National Guard in and temporary means until we can build the remainder of the border security fence, beef up the number of Border Patrol agents, forward station those Border Patrol agents down near the border so we got eyes and feet on every inch of that border to make sure if anybody comes across that they're apprehended. And once we have that border secure, then we could start working on the rest of the problem, which is dealing with illegal immigration.
Speaking of, what would you do to reform, change, or otherwise update our current immigration laws?
You know, it's actually easier to break in the back door than it is to come through the front door of this country, and it's sad. My grandparents were all immigrants. They came to this country from Italy. They came through Ellis Island and signed the guest book and then went out and tried to become Americans and assimilate into this great culture that we have. And we have to encourage that. But by creating a bureaucracy that costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time and discouraging people that want to come here legally from doing so and making it so easy for them to come here illegally, we're sending the wrong message. We've got to reform the current immigration system. We've got to slim it down to make it more efficient, do the background checks, do the health screenings, do the necessity to determine if they have a skill or a job that this country needs, and allow them to immigrate here, and do it without a lot of cost to the individual. I had an Air Force officer in my district who had married a German citizen, and it took him $10,000 in almost 4 years to get her citizenship, and that's just ridiculous, just ridiculous. So I think we need to expand our ports of entry, make it easier for people to come across, but make sure we have a way to track everybody that comes across, make sure they all come through the front door legally, they sign the guest book, and they don't break in the back door and raid the refrigerator. And that's been the biggest problem most Americans have had. They don't mind immigrants. You know, that's what built this country. What they don't like is people breaking the law and breaking into this country and then taking advantage of all the blessings that we have.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about education. Just a few questions. We want to start with the restrictions that were placed on the Mexican American Studies program within TUSD, and then the resulting stamp of, you know, this is over on that program. What's your position on how that went down and the ending of it?
I voted for the bill that, of course, made the program that you call Mexican American Studies, but I would tell you it was not done in a history mindset. It was done from the evidence that we've seen. And I actually went over and toured Choa High School while this was going on and saw a lot of it myself. And you know, I don't think anyone minds, in the context of normal history lessons, allowing kids in school to be taught about their heritage. You know, when I grew up in Pennsylvania in history class, I learned a little bit about Italian heritage, but I wasn't taught that the United States hates Italians. I wasn't taught that I was being oppressed by the United States, and I wasn't taught that people should accommodate me by becoming bilingual to speak Italian or mandate that Italian studies be taught. When I was in high school, we were taught American history, we were taught world history, we were taught a little bit about our cultural history, but we were taught to be Americans, and we were told about the great things that this country did and the offerings this country had, not the somewhat anti-American sort of hateful stuff that was being taught in TUSD, and that's why I supported doing away with that program. And I like what the school board's doing now to bring the cultural aspects and the historical aspects in with that program into a regular history class rather than a separate, segregated, and again, segregated classroom where Hispanic kids were separated and taught a separate sort of history lesson that was somewhat in some ways inaccurate and wrong, and I'm glad that that program's gone.
All right, we have a viewer question.
Sure.
This is from Sally Chandler. Sally says, I'm sick and tired of our children graduating from high school without knowing basic skills. No child left behind has, if anything, made things worse. Do you have plans for changing this, and how would you pay for it?
I think you're seeing a movement to reel in and limit the federal involvement in the education system. No Child Left Behind has been a failure. It's a mandate on the state of Arizona that's costing us a lot of money and having little results. The federal government should not be in the education business. We spend somewhere upwards of $62 billion a year on the Department of Education. There are 5,000 bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. that are in that department. Imagine what we could do if we take that money, that $62 billion, and leave it here in Arizona and put that money directly into the classrooms. I think it would be far better to allow local school districts and local governments to do the education policy in this country. We have 50 states that do things differently, 50 petri dishes where we can experiment. Florida's done some remarkable things. Arizona for school choice has done some remarkable things. Texas. I think that's the spirit of the United States and the system that our founders set up, what federalism was really meant to be. And the federal government taking over the education system when it was started back in 1980 after Jimmy Carter got it passed by Congress, it was supposed to improve student achievement, and it has done the opposite. Our student achievement has declined, and instead we're spending $62 billion a year for subpar results. Might as well just say, look, cut our losses, eliminate the Department of Education, rebate that money back to the states, and allow the states to put that money in the classroom with our kids.